The unsettling feeling, what existential anxiety tells us about being human. There's a particular kind of unease that can surface in quiet moments, perhaps late at night, during a period of major life change, or sometimes for no apparent reason at all. It's not the sharp, focused worry about an upcoming deadline or a specific social encounter. It's deeper, more pervasive, a vague yet profound sense of restlessness, groundlessness, or dread. It's a tremor beneath the surface of everyday life, a background hum of disquiet that hints at fundamental questions about existence itself. This is often called existential anxiety. Unlike clinical anxiety disorders, which typically involve excessive fear or worry often tied to specific triggers and may require professional treatment, existential anxiety is generally considered a natural, albeit uncomfortable, part of the human condition. It's an anxiety that stems not from immediate threats or psychological imbalances, but from our confrontation with the basic givens of existence, the fundamental realities we must all face simply by virtue of being self-aware, finite beings in a vast universe. It's the friction between our innate desires for permanence, meaning, connection, certainty, and the often harsh truths of the human situation. Understanding this unsettling feeling isn't about diagnosing an illness, but about deciphering a message. Existential anxiety, though deeply uncomfortable, can be seen as a vital signal, an indicator light on the dashboard of the human psyche, pointing towards fundamental truths about what it means to be human. Listening to it, rather than merely trying to silence it, can unlock profound insights and potentially guide us toward a more authentic and meaningful life. The deep roots, where does this feeling come from? Philosophers and psychologists who explore this terrain often point to several core existential realities, the inescapable givens, that generate this underlying anxiety. 1. Freedom and responsibility, as explored previously, the realization of our radical freedom, the fact that we are not predetermined beings but must constantly choose who we are and what matters, is a primary source of anxiety. If we are truly free, we are also totally responsible for our lives, our choices, and the meaning we create. There's no cosmic safety net, no guaranteed right path, no external authority to ultimately validate our decisions. This sheer weight of responsibility, the burden of authorship for our own existence without an instruction manual, can evoke a profound sense of dread, a fear of making the wrong choice, or a paralysis in the face of infinite possibilities. The anxiety whispers, "It's all up to you, and there's nowhere to hide." 2. Death and finitude, perhaps the most undeniable given is our mortality. We are beings aware of our own inevitable demise. This awareness creates a fundamental tension. We possess a desire to continue existing, to live, to experience, yet we know that our time is limited and death is inescapable. Existential anxiety related to death isn't always a conscious fear of dying itself, but often a deeper unease about the potential meaninglessness of a finite life, the fear of not having lived fully, the anxiety of oblivion, or the dread of leaving things undone. The knowledge that the clock is always ticking casts a shadow, urging us to consider how we spend our limited time and whether our lives ultimately hold significance in the face of eventual non-existence. 3. Isolation, we are social creatures, deeply needing connection and belonging. Yet, on a fundamental level, we are also inherently alone. There exists an unbridgeable gap between our own consciousness and that of another. No matter how close we are to someone, we can never fully merge, never completely know their inner world, nor they ours. We are born alone, experience the world through our unique subjective lens, and ultimately, die alone. This existential isolation isn't necessarily about loneliness, being physically alone, but about this fundamental separateness. The anxiety here stems from the awareness of this gulf, the longing for complete union or understanding that can never be fully realized, and the sense of being a solitary consciousness navigating the universe. 4. Meaninglessness, humans seem to have an innate drive to find meaning and purpose. We look for patterns, reasons, and significance in our lives and the world around us. Existential anxiety arises when we confront the possibility that the universe itself offers no inherent, preordained meaning. If there's no grand design, no cosmic purpose assigned to us, then life might be fundamentally meaningless or absurd from an objective standpoint. This can evoke a sense of disorientation, despair, or futility. The anxiety prompts the terrifying question, if there's no ultimate point, why bother? It forces us to grapple with the challenge of creating or discovering subjective meaning in a world that doesn't automatically provide it. These four givens, freedom, death, isolation, and meaninglessness, form the bedrock upon which existential anxiety rests. They are not problems to be solved, but conditions to be confronted. A universal echo, not pathology, but humanity. It's crucial to emphasize that experiencing anxiety related to these themes is not necessarily a sign of dysfunction. In fact, It can be argued that the absence of any such feeling might indicate a lack of self-awareness or a deep level of denial. Because humans are uniquely self-conscious, aware of our freedom, our future death, our separateness, and capable of questioning meaning, we are susceptible to this particular form of anxiety. It's woven into the fabric of conscious existence. Animals, presumably lacking this level of self-awareness, likely don't grapple with existential dread. This feeling, therefore, isn't something wrong with us, it's part of what makes us human. It's the price, and perhaps the privilege, of consciousness. Echoes in everyday life, how the anxiety manifests. While the roots of existential anxiety are deep and universal, its manifestations in our daily lives can be subtle, varied, and often disguised. We might not consciously think, "I'm anxious about my finitude today," but the underlying unease can ripple outwards, influencing our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in numerous ways. Vague unrest, a persistent feeling of dissatisfaction even when things are objectively going well. A sense of boredom, emptiness, or that something fundamental is missing. Decision paralysis, an excessive fear of making choices or commitments, stemming from the anxiety associated with freedom and responsibility. Fear of closing off other possibilities or making the wrong irreversible choice. Compulsive behaviors, throwing oneself excessively into work, workaholism, accumulating possessions, consumerism, seeking constant entertainment or distraction, substance abuse. These can function as attempts to numb the anxiety, fill the inner void, deny finitude by staying busy, or prove one's significance through external achievements. Relationship patterns, difficulty with intimacy, fear of engulfment, loss of self, or conversely, desperate merging and clinging, fear of isolation. Using relationships primarily to avoid loneliness rather than fostering genuine connection. Obsession with safety and control, an exaggerated need for security, predictability, and control over one's environment or future, often as a defense against the anxiety of freedom, uncertainty, and death. Midlife crises or questioning, periods where the awareness of finitude becomes more acute, prompting urgent questions about life choices, meaning, legacy, and whether one is living authentically. Disguised symptoms, sometimes, underlying existential anxiety can manifest as symptoms resembling depression, hopelessness, lack of motivation related to meaninglessness, or other anxiety disorders, panic attacks triggered by thoughts of death or overwhelming freedom. Recognizing these potential manifestations isn't about self-diagnosis, but about developing a deeper awareness of how these fundamental existential concerns might be playing out beneath the surface of our lives. The difficult teacher, what existential anxiety reveals. If we have the courage to turn towards this unsettling feeling instead of immediately trying to suppress or escape it, what can it teach us? Existential anxiety, viewed constructively, acts as a profound, albeit difficult, teacher. It signals avoidance. Its presence often indicates that we are avoiding confronting one or more of the core existential truths. The intensity of the feeling might correspond to the degree of our denial or avoidance. It clarifies values. By shaking our sense of complacency and forcing us to question everything, it prompts a search for what truly matters. Faced with finitude, superficial concerns often fall away, revealing deeper values. Confronting meaninglessness pushes us to define what gives our life meaning. It motivates authentic living. The awareness of freedom and responsibility, while anxiety-provoking, is also the necessary condition for living authentically. The anxiety signals the stakes involved in our choices and motivates us to choose more consciously and deliberately. It enhances appreciation for life. Paradoxically, confronting the reality of death can lead to a richer appreciation for life. Knowing our time is limited can make each moment more precious, encouraging us to live more fully, prioritize meaningful experiences, and savor connections. It deepens connection. Acknowledging our fundamental isolation can, perhaps surprisingly, pave the way for more authentic relationships. When we stop demanding that others fill our existential void or erase our separateness, we can connect with them more genuinely, appreciating them for who they are in their own distinct subjectivity. It spurs meaning creation. The anxiety arising from potential meaninglessness is the very engine that drives us to create, discover, and cultivate meaning in our lives through our commitments, passions, relationships, and contributions. In essence, existential anxiety acts like an internal compass, often pointing us away from superficiality and denial, and towards the challenging but ultimately rewarding path of authentic living. Living with the current, constructive responses. Given that existential anxiety is likely an inescapable part of being human, the goal isn't necessarily to eliminate it entirely, but to learn to live with it more consciously and constructively. This involves cultivating certain capacities. Courage. First and foremost, it takes courage to face these fundamental truths and the anxiety they evoke. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but but the willingness to proceed despite it, to look honestly at our condition without flinching or resorting to self-deception. Awareness and reflection. Instead of immediately distracting ourselves, we can practice paying attention to the feeling when it arises. Gently exploring, what is this feeling about? Is it related to freedom? Death? Isolation? Meaning? What choices or situations in my life might be triggering it? Journaling, meditation, therapy, or deep conversations can facilitate this reflection. Acceptance. Accepting existential anxiety as a normal part of the human experience, rather than a personal failing, can reduce secondary anxiety about being anxious. It involves acknowledging the feeling without judgment and recognizing its potential value as a signal. Meaning making. Since meaning isn't given, we must actively create it. Engaging wholeheartedly in activities, relationships, causes, and creative pursuits that feel personally significant is a powerful way to navigate the anxiety of meaninglessness. It's about investing ourselves in life. Authentic connection. While existential isolation is real, we can strive for genuine connection. This involves relating to others authentically, sharing our vulnerabilities, including our existential fears, listening deeply, and respecting their separateness while cherishing the connection. Living fully in the present, embracing the present moment, engaging our senses, and appreciating experiences can be an antidote to anxieties about the past or future, particularly the dread of finitude. Living fully now is the best response to the knowledge that time is limited. An invitation to authenticity. The unsettling feeling of existential anxiety is not a curse, but perhaps a profound invitation. It invites us to wake up from the slumber of unexamined lives, to question, to search, and ultimately, to choose. It reminds us that life is finite, precious, and largely unscripted. It pushes us to confront our freedom and take responsibility for the story we write, the connections we forge, and the meaning we create. While undeniably uncomfortable, this anxiety holds the key to a deeper, more authentic engagement with life. By learning to listen to its difficult whispers, by finding the courage to face the fundamental truths it reveals, we can move beyond mere existence towards a life lived with greater awareness, purpose, appreciation, and ultimately, a richer sense of our own humanity. It is, in its own strange way, a guidepost pointing towards the challenging, yet vital, path of becoming truly ourselves.